Alright folks, today in geometry we're going to learn how to measure, and we're going to talk about segments using a ruler and also measuring the degree of an angle. So you should have your geometer in front of you. Okay, you want to make sure that you can read the geometer. This thing, if you flip it upside down, you'll see it goes backwards. So we want to make sure it's faced front. And then you'll notice along the left hand side of your geometer you have the centimeters ruler, and along the right hand side of your geometer it's got the inches side. What we're going to do for each of these segments here is we're going to measure them both in inches and centimeters. So what I want you to do to start with on here is on the left hand side is where we're going to start measuring everything. Just like when we read, it'll go left to right, and so if it helps you, you might put a little stopping point there. You can do the same thing on this side, and that's going to help us read our ruler pretty quickly. So then we'll start with making sure our inches, since that's what it asks us for first, is on the top here. So we want to make sure that the 0 on our geometer is lined up with that mark we just made. Okay, once you have it lined up, we'll use the right hand side of the mark to figure out where we land. With inches, this is actually the tougher of the two. Each of these little marks counts for 1/16 of an inch. And that just means that this whole inch is broken up into 16 different parts. You'll notice some of these are longer than others. That just means when we count, we'll be able to reduce the number in inches as our fraction here. So what we're going to begin with is always looking at the end and finding the first whole number that's before we get to that mark. We don't want to go to after, even if it's closer. So the whole number to the left. So this one's going to be 2. That means we've got 2 whole inches and then a little bit more. And your job is just to count how many marks after that whole number you need. So here we've got 1, 2, looks like 3. If it's ever in between 2 of the marks, just find the one it's closest to. This one looks like it's pretty close to 3 itself. So how we write this is we start with the whole number, and that's the 2, and then we write that number we just counted, 3, on top of our fraction 16. It will always be 16 for inches to start with. Then, if it's one of those longer marks, you want to check this fraction to see if it reduces. In our case, it does not. So then we'll just put inches for a label. You can use IN like they have, or you can use the 2 tick marks, which means the same thing. On the other side, centimeters, flip over your thing, it doesn't have a 0, but again, this starting point, the first dash, will always go on the left for us, and it's a similar process. But here, there are only 10 marks instead of 16, so we're going to look at over 10. But the nice thing about tenths is we can write that as a decimal. So it actually makes centimeters easier for us to use. So centimeters, we'll still line it up, but then when we go through here, we just count after and put that as our decimal part. So we're looking for the whole number, that's 5, and then we count the number of marks after, and it looks like this one's about 6. So this would be 5 was our whole number, and it was 6 marks after, so we put 0.6 with a label of centimeters, cm. Okay, so you should be able to do that for those 3. Now we're going to talk about angles. On number 5 here, we're going to measure angles using what's called a protractor. On your geometer, they have one. Again, make sure you can read the geometer, otherwise it'll be backwards. But this circle at the bottom is your protractor here. What we're going to be using, importantly, is this hole that's near the center, but also this 0 that's at the right. You'll notice along this, going counterclockwise backwards, we have numbers 10, 20, 30, 40. Those are the degrees of any angle. And how we're going to measure this is, for an angle, we've got 2 sides that meet at a single point in the middle. Okay, that point in the middle is going to go in the middle of our circle here, but then we're going to put the bottom side of our angle on that 0. Okay, so for us, we'll line up this part with C. What's important is that your angle looks like it's opening towards the right. So this one down here you can see doesn't. We have to rotate it a little bit. We want it open so it makes the shape of an L. Okay, once that's working, our job is to put that meeting point in the center here, and then we want to line up the angle side that we see here with our arrow that's there. So we've got to turn it just a little bit so those are on top of each other. Double check that this is still in the corner, and then all we have to do is line up where this angle finishes. Okay, so what we want to do, just like the last time, we go backwards, we find the number before. So this one, the closest number on our marker is 50, and then we count up from there. So it looks like 2 marks after that. So that would be 52 degrees. So that's actually answering part B, is 50 degrees. And then part A wants us to name the angle. How you name it is starting with a symbol. We like to use those in math quite a bit. And an angle symbol just looks like an angle. I like to put a little arc through, so it doesn't look like a less than symbol that we have in math. Then we're going to use the 3 letters that are on there. And what's really important is because B is in the middle of A and C, we have to write it that way as well. So A, B, C. The only other way you could name this is C, B, A. We can't move that B from the middle. Okay? Otherwise, order doesn't matter. Last thing it asks us to do is classify the angle. Okay, make some notes for yourself here. We have angles that go from 0 to 89 degrees, because we're always going to measure to a whole number. We've got the ones that are exactly 90 degrees, and then we've got the ones that are greater than 90, but really we want 91 degrees. We already talked about 90. To about 179, because angles at 180 make a straight line, and then after that we can call it something smaller, so we won't have degrees over 180 ever. So these first ones, the small ones, are called acute angles. The 90 itself is a right angle, and the bigger ones are called obtuse. So now that we know that, our angle was 52 degrees, and that would fall in this first section, acute. So you just want to put acute there. And that's it for those. I am going to show you one of these upside down ones just so we know how to do that as well. Okay, so for this, our goal is to make this look like an L. So before you have your geometer, what I want you to do is just rotate your paper around until you get to that L, and so one of your segments should be going left and right here. Okay, so now that that's at the bottom, we can get our geometer to be able to measure this. We're going to lay it on top just like we normally do. Okay, we want that middle point on that hole in the middle, and then the one pointing to the right at 0. So we've got to rotate it a little bit more there. And then wherever this points is going to tell us the measure of our angle. Okay, so again, make a little mark there. And then we want to go backwards to the thing closest, because this angle from 0 hasn't quite reached that 130, so it's 120 something. And then you just count the numbers after. And it looks like 126 for this one. So our measure was 126, that's part B. Okay, our angle's name, remember the symbol goes first and then the 3 letters. They're all capitalized, they have to stay that way. This L just has to be in the middle. So I-L-O. And then because it's bigger than 90 degrees, this is going to be an obtuse angle. You should be able to do the rest of those based on that. Flipping it over here, we're going to talk about going the other direction measuring. And this is actually easier once we get the hang of reading our ruler. So This first one is in inches. You want to look for the label first that tells you what side of your geometer to use. Okay, so make sure that your inches side is at the top here. And what you're going to do is just line this up in the middle, okay, of the problem. That way we have some space. And our job is to go 5 7/8. Well, notice this fraction is over 8 instead of over 16. And we know inches have to be over 16. So we're going to go ahead and just change it real quick. So to get from 8 to 16, you have to multiply by 2. So we're going to take this 7 times 2 to get 14. That tells us how many tick marks we have to go. So our first job, what we're going to do, line up our geometer and start at 0 with a big point. Once we have that point, what we're going to do is look at our ruler, and the whole number 5 is where we have to look. So here's 5. From there, we just decided we wanted to go 14 marks after. So you're just going to count until you get to 14 going across here, and that's this one, and make a dot above it. Once you have your 2 dots, keep your geometer down and connect them. Be really careful not to go past your dots. Those dots that we made are points A and point B. The letters go right beside them. Doesn't matter if it's above or below. And last thing you need to do is write the number they gave you, 5 7/8 inches, on top or below the line. The same thing will go for centimeters. Flip over your geometer. Make sure your starting point is at the left. And this time our whole number is 8. Okay, so looking here, we're going to start with a point at 0. And then 8, we want to go 4 past it. 1, 2, 3, 4, put a dot. And then once you have your 2 points, go ahead and connect them. Once again, these points are your letters, capital Q, capital R. Label that number above or below, it does not matter to me. That's it. You can do number 13 on your own. We're going to talk about finally drawing and labeling angles. Okay, we've got 34 degrees we're looking at. When we're talking about an angle, remember there are usually 3 letters labeled, 3 points, and there's 1 in the middle, and we started at 0 when we were measuring these. The same thing's going to go working backwards. You're going to take your protractor, that circle, and you're going to start with that center towards the bottom, because that's where the bottom of our angle will be. Then what we're going to do is use these spaces in our geometer to actually mark the 3 points we need to be able to draw this. So you're going to always start with the point in the middle. Go ahead and just put your pencil in there and mark it. And then that mark right at 0 as well. From there, your job is just to find the number they gave us. Okay, so they gave us 34. We're going to go 10, 20, 30, and then 4 tick marks more and make a mark. Once you have your 3 marks, those are points that go on our angle. And our job is just to use the side of our geometer to make straight lines. You want to make sure that you start at the middle point and go past the other point. So when you connect it, don't stop at that one, keep going. That way you can throw an arrow on the end. Same thing goes on this one. We're going to start at the middle point, go through the other point and past it. Throw on an arrow. For these, we need 3 letters, A, B, C, and that B is in the middle, it has to go at the corner. The other 2 doesn't matter where you put them. Last step, just like we did up on the segments, we put the number. We're going to put the number here. We'll just put it in the corner inside the angle itself. Alright, from there you should be able to handle these other ones, but please come in if you have any trouble with measuring.